In this People and Performance End of Season special episode, we're going to recap what we learned from Season 2 experts such as Kevin Oakes, Pauline James, Rohit Manucha, and Dave Millner. We'll then offer some predictions for what to expect for workforce planning and performance management in 2022. And by the way, this is a special crossover episode that'll go live both on People and Performance podcast and the HRchat show just ahead of the holidays. Hey, Bill. Here we are at the end of another year and another season of the People and Performance Pod. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today and signing off with some reflections and helpful predictions of what to expect from the world of work in the year ahead. Tell me about the Season 2 guests and some of the key takeaways that you gained.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Okay, so it was another pretty packed season of the People and Performance podcast, but I'll try and run through each of the episodes. I'll do it in order, starting from Season 2, Episode 1, all the way through to this one now. So, in Season 2, Episode 1, we kicked off with a pretty cool conversation with a guy called Rupert Morrison. Rupert is CEO over at OrgView, a global HR and organisational planning company that believes that the brightest business leaders need to design for disruption and turn it into a competitive advantage. And within that episode, we covered such issues as what are some reasons why businesses often don't fully understand the duties and the output of their employees. I think you asked him around who should control the strategy and who should control the execution of most org redesigns. And also we talked a little bit about, in the context of one of OrgView's recent white papers that suggests companies can recover the cost of project investment in 12 months by consolidating manual processes and improving data quality to reduce time spent on reporting. And then in Season 2, Episode 2, we spoke with Rohit Manucha, who is the Chief Human Resource Officer at SIH AGH, and he was formerly the head of HR at Arjun Coca-Cola Beverages Company. And in that conversation, we chatted to him about what are some of the biggest challenges for HR pros when working with leaders towards aligning organizations with their strategic agendas and managing huge changes as a result of COVID. We also spoke a wee bit about what skills does an effective OD practitioner require to, particularly in the context of managing a disparate and global employee base. And we touched upon, when done in the right ways, what can an OD intervention delivered perhaps by a seasoned OD practitioner give to an organisation. And also conversely, what if it's not delivered in accordance with the specific culture of an organisation? How can things potentially go wrong? In Season 2, Episode 3, we explored claims that the approach called design thinking is going to become a game changer for HR processes. And in fact, in many organisations, it already is, Chris. Design thinking, for those who are not super familiar, that's a process for creative problem solving that's helped HR teams across the globe deliver value, organise work and find solutions. And maybe at first glance, product design and HR perhaps feel a little bit apart from each other. But actually, the approach has been lauded by many industry experts as a powerful approach that can solve problems with a more of a human-centric lens, if you like. And our guest in that episode was a really nice chap from Down Under called Glenn Donaldson, who's the Chief Customer Officer and President of IntelliHR Americas. And he's a specialist in HR tech with expertise and passion for things like product strategy, customer success, and business expansion. And he was able to give us the perspective of someone who works within an HR tech company, but works very closely with their clients to get the best out of the technology that their clients are using. In Season 2, Episode 4, we kind of interrupted the regular scheduling, if you like, and we had a video panel. And in that panel, we talked all things HR and recruitment tech. Plus, we did a bit of a deep dive into people analytics and a bit of blockchain as well. Now, I was the host for that particular panel, And listeners, if you haven't seen it yet, you'll understand why I've got the perfect face for audio podcasts. And my fantastic three guests were the wonderful Chris Bjorling, who's with me, of course, today. And for those of you who don't know Chris as well as I do, just a reminder, he is the CEO of Fidello, a consulting services firm that specialises in improving human performance. We're also joined by Dave Millner, who's an author, futurist, and consulting partner at HRcurator, a firm providing consultancy, advice, support, and solutions to clients. David is a big influencer on social, and you might recognise the handle at HRcurator. And finally, for the panel, we had Elizabeth Farghese, who is the people and tech strategist and global leader of talent and HR strategy reinvention over at IBM. Elizabeth, amongst other things, is recognised as a key global influencer in strategy and analytics, and she's been listed as a top 100 influencer by many different people over the years. And that panel considered things like how can people analytics help create alternative scenarios that can be predictive and have the best choices recommended, connecting employee experience to the customer experience, and why, which actually ties quite nicely back in with the previous episode with Glenn. What can HR tech still learn from customer-focused tech experiences? We spoke a wee bit about Dave's belief that HR needs to be more commercial in its approach. I won't say too much more. I'll invite listeners to check out that episode instead. And how can blockchain turn HR processes and HR tech into a company's competitive advantage? In episode 5 of the second season, we spoke with a really big thought leader in the space, actually, Dr. Charles Handler. He's an analyst, he's a practitioner within talent assessment and human capital space. And throughout Dr. Handler's career, he specialised in developing effective, legally defensible employee selection systems. And so we spoke with him about issues such as process of assessment and selection. Why, for example, is it more important to ask the right questions than to keep the job assessment short, as his findings have shown? Are humans inherently biased or flawed in evaluating candidate capabilities? And is AI finally ready to step in, or is that still influenced by biases as well? And we also spoke a wee bit about job fit versus organisational fit when it comes to hiring candidates who'll stay and grow with the company. Is culture fit more important than credentials and prior career experience, particularly, when you're trying to be a bit more giving in what you're looking for in people during this great resignation and war for talent? Season 6, we welcomed Pauline James, Toronto-based Pauline James, who's the founder and CEO of Anchor HR Services and just generally an all-round awesome person. Anchor HR are a firm that helps organisations with implementing solutions required to drive a great employee experience and business results. And in that conversation, we considered how the challenge of assessing organisational gaps and needs changed since the outbreak of COVID. In a time when employers are bending over backwards to attract top talent, can they do so in ways that don't potentially compromise culture fit? That's a huge question that we keep hearing. And how can employers today measure an employee's output and commitment to their work and company's missions in ways that perhaps don't alienate staff? They don't feel like they're being monitored all the time. The 7th episode, and the one just before this, I'll recap, was with a big name within the industry, a guy called Kevin Oakes, who's the CEO and co-founder of the Institute for Corporate Productivity, or I4CP, and he's an authority on next practices within human capital. Kevin is also the author of a book called Culture Renovation, and drawing on data from one of the largest studies ever conducted on corporate culture, Culture Renovation details how high-performance companies such as Microsoft and T-Mobile and many, many more have successfully changed organizational culture. And in the interview, Chris and I delved into such issues as when it's an organization in need of a culture renovation. Kevin gave great answers to things like, has the pandemic exacerbated any of those problems? Recent studies show that 62% of consumers want brands to stand for something. So we asked Kevin, has this led to more brands taking a stand and making purpose part of their culture? We also delved into why our leaders are often wrong about what their corporate culture actually represents and how can they start getting it right, and what's the impact when the top level is actually aligned with the culture. So, Chris, that's a wee bit of a summary of the episodes in season 2. I'm sure we'll talk a wee bit about season 3 before we finish up. Okay, Chris. So I've just spoken for a very long time there. Let's hear a bit from you now. So we are 2 seasons through the People and Performance podcast already. Oh my goodness me! Any guests from either season? So let's not just restrict ourselves to season 2, but from either season so far that you'd like to give a particular shout out to, a particular mention, and if so, why?
Yeah, that's just a dirty question. I have to tell you back there. I'm a father of 7 kids, and if I ever said who's my favorite and specifically named one, I'd be in trouble. I've had the pleasure of re-listening to all of our broadcasts as we've gone through each of the wrap-ups, and I look back and I'm like, there's not really one in particular that I just love more than the other. They're all spectacular. We've had such great guests with such great insights and influence in their own space, and for things for us to think about and go forward. I will challenge anybody, because I know it was a longer session, to go back and listen to the discussion that Elizabeth, Dave, and I had just here in season 2, just because there's so many points and nuggets in there, and there's a lot of fun things that are associated with it. And it was where I got a chance to be a guest versus being a host. So if you get the downtime to sit through that one and go through it again, it'd be wonderful. But overall, if you get a chance, go through the topics that we've had in each of our speakers, because there are pearls of wisdom from everybody, and I appreciate everybody participating to date. So thank you.
Okay, so what are your predictions, Chris, for 2022 then, in terms of the ways that we manage people and maximize performance throughout next year? Well, maybe you can point to any new trends that we should be looking out for, and maybe what's going to stay the same as well.
Hey, great question. Let me get my crystal ball out here and just kind of predict the future here. Oh, there's going to be another. Oh no, I don't want to go that way. So yeah, great question, Bill. What do we project for the future as we roll in here? First, we're going to have to weather through this pandemic next little, the Omicron variant that's out there, and keep going forward. But I think we've got those processes in place. So I think we're going to continue to move in the right direction with those types of ideas around how do we continue to react and to plan and to implement based upon what we're currently being dealt in the situations that are out there. So we go along those lines. So the concept of managing people and maximizing performance, though, I think we're going to continue to see, or at least I hope we do, the concept of the fact that an employer needs to really understand their culture and create the appropriate brand for themselves. They need to be able to attract the talent that they want to have to be successful. So, and also to be successful in the way they want to work and the way they want to do their business. Because we're finding through the great resignation and everything else like that people are just choosing. They're choosing to not necessarily quit because they need to quit, but quit because they want to have more affiliation or affinity towards a thought or a brand that an organization has. And so that opportunity to craft that brand, to promote that brand, to put it into your job descriptions, to move forward with that, bake it into your performance review process, whether it's a traditional or whether it's a new, more conversational concept along those lines. I think it's important for that brand to be, and the culture to be, a leader in the process that's out there. And in everything, it's also to help shape the employee experience once they're in the organization. Because we're later in doing this versus November, I also had the chance to sit through a Qualtrics review of a global survey that they put out there. And, the concepts of that they captured were listening to your people, shifting to strategic well-being, orient towards the future, invest in managers and leaders. I think all those types of things are items that we've talked about, in bits and pieces throughout the year or throughout our 2 seasons that we've had to date. But I think that as we go into the new year, those are the things that we're going to continue to see as success. And even the technology you use to help onboard and to move people through the process, because we're now more remote, you got to have that employee experience focus in putting those pieces in place and those tools in place. Because one of the studies points that they found out was that the best technology creates the greatest engagement with the workforce. So as you look through that technology needs to support where you're going. So as in general, employer brand, employee experience, technologically enabled to support our distanced interactions that we have more so now. So I think that's really where we're going to continue to see focus and growth in 2022.
Okay, you can put your crystal ball away for the time being, sir. Perhaps I'll get you to bring it out again this time next year. We're going to shortly wrap up, but I just want to give our listeners just a little taster of what to expect from January of next year. So I don't even need a crystal ball, listeners, because I know for sure some things that are going to happen, and those things are as follows. While season 2 had a kind of a general leaning towards topics related to competency development, season 3 of the People and Performance podcast will have an underlining theme of development planning and helping employees grow. And I can guarantee for you that in 2022, we're going to have amazing guests on. And they're going to be from organizations such as the National Association of African Americans in HR. And we actually got the president from the NAAA HR. Her name is Erica Broadwater. We've also got a fantastic chap from my neck of the woods, the UK. He's called Perry Timms, and he's the founder of a company called People and Transformational HR Limited. And he's just a very, very nice human being, and he's going to share lots of tips. We've got a guy called Dr. Spencer Niles, who he does some stuff with a really cool company called CUDA in the L&D space, and he's also a professor over at the William and Mary School of Education. And I mentioned him earlier on as part of a panel that we had this season. That's Dave Millner, but he's going to be back on the show on his own. He doesn't need anybody else to prop him up this time round, and he's going to get grilled by Chris and I. And we're also hoping to have a chap called Bernard Bedon, or Bernard Bedon, as my North American friends would say, and he's vice president of senior HR BP over at Nike. So a pretty good lineup. They're not the only guests that we're going to have on next season, but that should be enough to get you salivating and itching for episode 1 of season 3, coming to a set of headphones near you very, very soon. Chris, before we do wrap up, I'll open it up to you in just a second, but from my side, I'd just like to say to the listeners that we are back in it again. Unfortunately, we thought we'd got through the worst of it, but we're back in it at the moment. But there are signs for optimism compared to the alpha and previous waves that we've all had to live through, and hopefully this will be over sooner rather than later, and then we can get back on with our normal lives. But I just want to wish everyone out there as much as possible a happy holidays, and first and foremost a safe holiday period, and hopefully a happy new year. Chris, what about yourself?
Excellent, Bill. Thank you so much. My sentiments exactly for those that are going through this time of the Omicron, and still closing out the last 2 windows of what's been going on as well. Our hearts are with you, especially during this time of the year. We wish everybody the best in processing through that. I know that for some of us, we've had losses through this process, and we feel for that, and we know that we can learn from everything we've experienced and going forward. So I wish everybody the best with as they continue to deal through this season with the current state of health and well-being in the area that you live. I do want to go back and say, it's kind of like a celebration time when I just heard you talk about our season 3 guest list. I've had the chance to talk to a few of them, and I am so excited for everybody, for all our listeners, because you're going to hear some great episodes. I think you're going to really love the talent we're bringing to the table here, because there's a lot of great thoughts, a lot of new things. We're going to get into diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We're going to get into different concepts around what's and whys and hows, and it's just really going to be fun for people, I think, if to pick us back up in January and go forward along those lines. So it's there. For me, I just want to wish everybody happy holidays, whatever holiday you're celebrating. If you're not celebrating holidays, enjoy the time off that everybody else is celebrating holidays for, because most of us get it during this time of the year. So just enjoy the end of the year, and I hope you're grateful for all that you have and all of those that are around you, and wish you all the best.
Excellent. I've just got one more thank you to add, but I'm going to preface it with an apology because I was in Toronto very recently, but I wasn't able to go south of the border without having to do lots of tests and things to meet up with you, Chris. But we will get there. But I just want to add one more thank you, and that's to you. Thank you for being an awesome human being and someone who's lovely to work with, and someone who's great fun to co-present a little podcast in the HR and leadership and talent space. So thank you, and long may it continue.
Bill, thank you very much. I just need to reciprocate because it's so true. You're the catalyst behind this, and I appreciate you reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, Chris, why don't we look at doing this?" You didn't have to, but I'm having a blast doing it, and I'm, getting a lot of different people chiming in at different mediums, saying, "Hey, this was cool. I want to learn more about that. Talk to us about this." And so it's a great chance for further conversation for people, because the topics are so relevant, and you're really keeping it alive and fresh. And I love that, and I love the working relationship with you. And I wish you best in the UK right now as you're back across the pond. And I hope you enjoy your time with your family.
Thank you. And well, I think that's everything for this year. So stay tuned. We will be announcing when episode 1 of season 3 comes out. It will be most likely mid-January. Shh, don't tell anybody. But we will be announcing that very shortly. And we can't wait to be back in your earphones, telling you more about what's going on in the world of work. But until then, happy holidays and a very happy new year. This podcast is supported by Fidello Inc., a consulting firm specializing in improving human performance. Through their products and services, Fidello helps clients design, develop, and implement strategic integrated human resource processes and systems. Learn more at fidello.com. That's FIDELLO.com.